Hello, everyone. Welcome to this episode of Beyond the Barclay with me, Jez Davies. I'm joined with Morgan. Hi, Morgan.
Hello.
I don't know if I need to introduce you to this all the time. Do I really know you're a permanent fixture?
I mean, it's nice, isn't it? It's nice to ask how I am.
Well, yeah. So in that format, then, how are you?
I'm moisturised, stretched, and watered with my mint tea, so I'm rocking and rolling. How are you?
Yeah, good. I mean, we got quite a good result at the weekend, didn't we? I mean, again, this won't be going out for a couple of weeks, so people will know when we're talking about this. But the Watford game, how did you think it went?
I mean, clung in. They're not. Watford are a weird one. I always have fear whenever we play them because we've had some weird results against them when we beat them 3-1 earlier in the season, and then when we smashed them in the Premier League that time with Sargent scoring that amazing header. But then we've had abysmal results against them under Farker and stuff. So I wasn't optimistic, and I thought, if I'm honest, I thought when they got their man sent off, I was like, we'll be fine. We'll probably end up winning this 3-0, and we end up sort of clinging on. But ultimately, they're a championship, they're a solid championship outfit who are streetwise and they're rough and ready. So I think our boys did well given what they've been in. Most of them been in England about 7 months. So I think we did pretty well.
Look, I mean, I come at that from a bit of a different angle. I never really felt under threat that Watford were going to do anything other than not score really. I mean, I never, other than the chance they had, I think it was Edwards, wasn't it, the guy at right back. I never felt under threat in that game. I kind of felt that Norwich managed that game really effectively, and although it would have, it'd be nice to have been more comfortable, I do think that we did really well in that game. And Watford's a difficult place to go to, right?
Yeah, it is. I mean, you're biased anyway because you've got if listeners don't already know, Jez has got a little thing for Luton, so of course you're going to say that.
Well, yeah, exactly, yeah. So Watford, Luton's Ipswich. So, and I should actually like Watford because I'm, live in the same county as them, but I don't. So yeah, there we go. Right, I suppose we should probably introduce our guest for today, Morgan. Hi Ben, how are you?
Hiya. Very good, thank you. Thanks for having me.
No, not at all, and thanks very much for coming on. If you'd just like to introduce yourself to the audience, where you're from, what you do for a living now, and perhaps how long you supported Norwich for.
My name's Ben Glaysher. I'm 38. I'm from Dereham, so I've had the fortune of supporting Norwich for my entire life. I spent a few years living in London for work, but I'm back in Norwich now, working in local government. And my family's sort of been involved with the club and around the club for my whole life, really, from a very young age. My nan's worked at the club for pretty much her whole life. My dad was the steward there for a while, and my auntie was working at the club as well. So it's always been a part of the family for us.
Okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, Ben also, so listeners at home, I've known Ben for many years, and Ben dragged me back into the fold of following Norwich back when I lived with you, wasn't it 2010, 2011, something like that. So I've got you to thank for this journey, as it were.
Thank might be a different word as well as we are at the moment. Perhaps.
Don't make quips when I've got a mouthful of tea.
Oh, there we go. Excellent. So I suppose we'll jump into the famous 10 questions. Shall I start, Morgan, or would you like to ask the first question?
No, you go, buddy.
Excellent. So question 1 is, what was the first Norwich City game that you ever attended?
The first game I ever attended was against at home to Sheffield United in 1992.
Wow.
So I still remember sitting maybe, it was almost front row down the front of the City stand, towards sort of the river end up that corner. And I remember it was a November game, I think it was, when I checked. So it was pretty cold, I remember. And we left a bit early.
Right.
And missed Mark Robins winner in the 80th minute.
A bit early, 80th
I
minute.
know. I remember leaving early and missing the winner. And when I looked it up yesterday to see that it was actually in the 80th minute, bit disappointed that my dad pulled us away as early as he did. But I guess he wanted to beat the traffic.
What are both your opinions on? Because a lot of people rage about people who leave the games early. What are you guys' opinions on that?
I mean, if you're getting smashed, then it's a different story, isn't it? Sticking around. But I think if the players are putting the effort in, it's always nice to stay till the end and appreciate that.
Yeah, I mean, I can only ever remember leaving early once, maybe twice, and both times, as you mentioned, Ben, we were being quite handsomely beaten. It was the Fulham game at Craven Cottage. I think it was just the disappointment around the fact that had we won that game, or even I think drawn it, I think we might have stayed up. And I think that was that one. We were just played off the park, weren't we? But the other one was the Colchester game, which was interesting. I think might be a good way of putting it, given that we were 5-6-0 down or whatever it was in five. And I think that one was just sort of one of those head in hands moment where, I mean, the stadium, I think we probably started the game with 25,000 in there, which was good for League One, but by the end of it, I think that we were lucky if there was about 3,500 in that stadium. So, it was a very bizarre day. But yeah, other than that, I can't remember leaving early. I think you're right, Ben. I think it's nice to stay. But for me, I don't, if people need to leave early for work reasons or, they've got a young family, which I can kind of appreciate that nowadays more so than previous. I certainly think that, that's allowed's probably the word I wasn't looking for, but you know what I'm saying. You can appreciate it, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I would have been 6 when I was at my first game, so that's probably a reason why we'd left when we did. But
and it's probably freezing cold. So I said to Jez the other day, because we're going up. By the time this goes out, Derby we would have played Derby, but I said to Jez, I was like, I hate going to Carrow Road in the winter. I've got my thermals, so I'll probably end up wearing them and my bubble hat. But when you're 6 years old, 7 years old, sitting for 90 minutes in the cold, it's probably not the one.
No, definitely not. What was Morgan? Did we ask this question when you came on? And first off, what was the first game that you attended? I don't think we asked that one.
I think it was. We did. It was. I think we played Southend and we lost. It was like in the late 90s. So yeah, that was one of the games. One of the first games I attended, just because. Without going into too much of my personal history, we just didn't have money.
Right.
So, growing up when my parents divorced, so I think it was just cheap. I think, I can't remember, Ben, maybe you can help me out, but that sort of period of time, was it Kids for a Quid then or something?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the first one I went to. But yeah, it was awful. I was like, this isn't entertaining. And then however many years later, I'm still thinking, this isn't entertaining. No, I'm joking. Okay. So on that train of thought, if you could relive one Norwich match in history, which would it be and why?
I mean, in terms of games I attended, it'd probably have to be the playoff final. Against Middlesbrough. I mean, there's not much better feeling than seeing your team play at Wembley, especially when you win as well.
That one's cropped up a fair few times, isn't it? I mean,
yeah.
I don't think it really gets much better than that in that sense. We even get a little trophy at the end of it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we've been in the Premier League a few times, but I wouldn't say we've really had success there, other than the odd sort of token good win. But overall success, really, really good to see a team play at Wembley. And then another game I picked out would probably be the win over Bayern Munich, but I obviously didn't attend that, but
Big moment in Norwich City's history, though, wasn't it? And I think that's something
yeah,
we can all look back on with a tremendous sense of pride.
yes,
And I still think, I don't know whether this was. I think someone mentioned it the other day that we were the only team, British English team, to win at the old Olympic Stadium.
Yeah,
that's right.
that's a great pub quiz question.
Yeah, that's absolutely. But I think that's both of those mentioned, and I can see the reasons for that. I mean, for me, the whole day for Wembley was great, wasn't it? I mean, the atmosphere before was, I mean, probably more so from the Middlesbrough fans, really. Was electric. Both teams was pretty electric, but I just remember sitting there thinking, oh, we were in for a game here, because it was just raucous. And I think it was quite clear from early on that the way that game was going to go, was the Cameron Jerome no-look goal for me was
Yeah.
Both goals were good, weren't they? I mean, obviously Redmond's one with the 20 passes or whatever it was beforehand as well. Sorry, Morgan, I interrupted you.
No, it's all right. I was looking up Cameron Jerome last night, and I was just thinking how he was with us for 4 years, and I was just trying to read his most prolific spell, and I think it's joint with us. And where was he beforehand? He was at Palace and Birmingham, and I think his most prolific spell was, I think, with us. And I said to Glaysher the other day, I was like, I really wish we had a striker of that caliber now. I mean, obviously the team's tactics has changed, but just that Jerome would put in a shift for a season. I can't ever remember him being injured. Not out for a prolonged spell like Sargent has been, and I'm not getting at Sargent for that, but I miss that solid striker up top. I mean, Jerome he came in at I think we got him for like 1.5 million. What I read, when Neil Adams hooked him in, and he was just so good that season. The second half of that season when Neil picked us up, it was Jerome Johnson and Houlihan, I think, dragging us up. Up the league, and I think that's what makes Wembley so special, is that we had the run. We were looking like we were hungover from the Premier League, and we had that bit of a bad run at the beginning, but by hook or by crook we got there. We got to Wembley, and I don't think anyone expected it. And that's the end of that, really.
No, absolutely. I think, can you still hear me, by the way?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that team we had, I mean, it'd be interesting to see if we could kind of, I don't know, remember might be the wrong word to use, but could we see if we could remember the lineup from that day? Should we give it a go?
Yeah, okay. So Ruddy.
Yeah.
Martin, Whittaker.
Yeah.
Basong.
Yeah.
Martin. Yeah, so that's the back four.
Who's left back?
Olsen.
Yeah.
Olsen, yes.
I thought you meant Martin Olsen, so that's why I was
no, Russell Martin.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Redmond, Howson, Johnson, Houlihan, Jerome, and who else was up? Who else was there? Who else was on the left wing?
Well, I'll tell you that we've missed a central midfielder. Is the only one that we haven't mentioned. And it's pretty obvious you're going to kick yourself when you.
Dorrans.
No, Dorrans was on the bench. He came on.
I said Howson, Johnson. Who else? Houlihan. I don't know. Go on.
Alexander Tetty.
No, wow, of course.
Of course.
Of course. And it's funny because we've just signed that. I'm looking at him now. Jacob Wright from Man City.
Yeah.
I feel like it's the first DM we've had since Tetty and Skip wasn't our player. No. So how crazy is that?
Right, absolutely. And
We don't need a DM apparently. Anyway,
the three players that come off the bench were Gary O'Neill, obviously recently departed Wolves.
yeah,
He came on for the last 3 minutes. Graham Dorrans and Lewis Grabban came off the bench as well. Unused subs.
that was a solid team, wasn't it? Really?
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, if you consider as well that the unused subs that day were Ryan Bennett, Elliot Bennett, and Gary Hooper.
Wow, oh my God, yeah, Elliot Bennett, we still had him then, and Hooper.
Mm-hmm. You look at that bench and you think, I mean, that's you'd that all three of those players that didn't come on at that time would have made any championship team
easily.
Yeah,
easily at the time. It's like I said, I think I said in a comment on the Pinkin the other day about when we signed the last ill-fated season with Ricky van Wolfswinkel. We had Hooper, Fur, Elmander having had Premier League experience, Hooper banging him in for Celtic, and Fur, who was a really good player. We covered that in that Swansea episode, Jez. But I just don't understand how it went so badly wrong when you have that attacking lineup. Like if you take Van Wolfswinkel aside, But yeah, Hooper was a decent player, I think.
Yeah, he was great. And funnily enough, I haven't got this in my head, by the way. I've actually got it up on the screen, so don't think I'm a freak of nature that just knows these things. But Middlesbrough had 4 former Norwich players were in their squad that day.
Really?
Go on, see if you can guess them.
Oh God, no! Because
there's a defender, Ayala.
Yes, yeah, that's the one I didn't think you'd get. But there's another defender who's recently departed us, by the way. Gibson, yep.
Yeah, and obviously Patrick Bamford.
Yep, and then one more that was on the bench for Middlesbrough that day, which I don't think you're going to get. So I'll tell you, it's Adam Forshaw.
Oh yeah.
So it's interesting, isn't it? That the sort of the Norwich links within that team as well. So it's going back to the game, I think we never looked like. Well, I suppose it's easy to say that at 2-0 up, but we just never looked like they were going to concede, did we, and lose that game. So it's a very unlike Norwich performance, I suppose, in the fact that we just literally
turned up.
Turned up.
And we'd lost both games to them that season as well. I think.
Yeah.
By an aggregate of 5-0, we hadn't scored against them in both games, and to just play them off the park at Wembley.
No,
because they didn't get time to settle in. I know that they parked the bus at Carrow Road and they nicked that goal. They nicked it, didn't they? 1-0. Yeah. And I think everyone was concerned that was going to happen again. So we just started out of the blocks, like put pressure on them and got the 2. And I thought to myself, I was like, if we score 2 within the first 15 minutes, what is this going to be? Yeah. But it wasn't a whitewash, but it was a great result, great day out.
No,
will always stay with me.
No, agreed. And I think, sort of not to labour the point on this, but I think as well as, another Norwich game we don't rarely mention is the Portsmouth, where, similar sort of circumstance, getting promoted to the Premier League at Portsmouth at Fratton Park was superb. But I think that kind of led to a sustained, which again, not something we regularly say, but a sustained Premier League period of 3 seasons after that. And that was all around for me, the team that Lambert built, which was sort of young, upcoming English players that wanted to, wanted to perform and get themselves to the highest level.
Like McKenna's Ipswich.
Yeah. They're making a fist of it, aren't they? But interesting signing for them yesterday with the goalkeeper. I think that's something that they lacked lack in Muric. I mean, I don't want to talk about Ipswich too much for obvious reasons, but it's quite a good signing for them.
Maybe.
Right. Okay. So moving swiftly on, Ben, who is your most underrated player you've seen in a Norwich shirt?
This was quite a tough one to think about, really. Sort of looking back at previous squads. More recently, I'd probably say Marco Stiepermann.
Yeah.
That's a good shout.
I thought he always worked hard. He was always in the right place at the right time, but sort of could be invisible as well. Like you wouldn't necessarily notice what he was doing, but it was always always had its purpose.
I think with him, he tended to bring the team up a little bit in terms of up the pitch. I mean, having him in that sort of number 10 role, if you like, but it wasn't a number 10 role, but it kind of was really. His energy levels and his ability to carry the ball kind of led to a lot of what was good around the sort of the Pukki, Cantwell and Buendia element, I suppose. Without him in that, it kind of fell down a little bit, and I think he was absolutely instrumental in that season and the following season actually as well. He, although we didn't stay up in the Premier League, the game against Man City was a classic example of his impact on the team. I think Steepman's a great shout, to be honest.
Yeah, it's especially of recent times. And like I don't want to be rude, but I kind of forgot about what I always, when everyone says about that season, I always go for Vrancic. But I think with him in that position, he was always kind of, we kind of defended from the front a bit. He would break up play, but also, like you said, feed it through as well. So yeah, I think and also remember the weird goal celebrations that he did that season, the crab and those that weird nose thing that he did with Tim Closer.
The photo of him having a kebab by himself on Prince of Wales Road after the promotion parade.
Oh yeah, I remember that. Someone snapped him, just sat there on his own.
Well, just before you do, there's a player that I want to mention that very rarely gets a mention, and he goes by the name of Jean-Yves de Blassy. Do we remember Jean-Yves de Blassy?
I don't think I do.
Oh mate, if you've outwitted us with a player top trump, I will be most unhappy. I don't remember that. No.
Jean-Yves de Blassy was around the time of when we had Cedric Gonsolon, and he came in probably about the same time, and he was a really tidy footballer. To be honest with you, around that time we had quite a few players like that, like Des Hamilton that came in, and it was around the time of sort of, I think Adrian Forbes was still knocking about, but we were never going to pull up any trees with that team. But I always remember de Blassy having a really big impact in our midfield. He was sort of your stereotypical kind of defensive midfielder enforcer. But it's funny, isn't it? I mean, I'm surprised you guys don't remember him, because it was around that sort of time of probably the early 2000s, late 90s, early 2000s. He was with us, but I just thought he was worth an honourable mention. But I don't know.
Did you salute him as well?
Yes. Yeah. Great.
I can feel it in the air that you're doing it. So I take your word for it.
Yeah, I think on that note, then Morgan, over to you for the next question.
Okay, Ben. So your dad was once a steward at Carrow Road, Big Trev.
Yep.
Could you share with us some memories of that time and the experience?
Yeah, so I mean, I used to go to a lot of games back then because I'd just hop in the car with him. But I think one of my favourite memories is versus Ipswich in 2003, and basically, obviously, complete sellout being versus Ipswich, and he was like, "Come along anyway, it'll be fine." So it's like, hang around outside the gate until kick-off, because obviously I didn't have a ticket, so I sort of just loitered around the gate, and then at 3 o'clock he comes and lets me in, and takes me into Lower Barclay, and obviously, everyone sort of knew who he was, so they didn't really care too much, and he was like, just sort of stand on the end there, tuck yourself in. So I just sort of stood on the end of an aisle, and then all the police started walking around, getting everyone to sit down. And obviously I didn't have a seat or a ticket. So I had to sort of walk off, try and loiter in another area. And I did this about 3 or 4 times for about the first half an hour, until eventually I managed to find a seat with where someone hadn't turned up. But yeah, basically just spent the whole first half just avoiding the police. And then we lost 2-0 that day as well. So
Fantastic. I mean, obviously you're not the kind of guy to do that anymore, right?
no.
So people shouldn't be frightened if they see you loitering around Carrow Road.
No, I'd have a ticket for sure now. Yeah.
Okay. Well, you don't get tickets anymore, do you? You got the plastic
Well,
card.
yeah.
You'd
How
be,
long? How long was? Apologies if you'd mentioned it, Ben, but how long was your dad a steward for at Caraway?
I can't remember exactly, but around sort of 10 years, yeah. From sort of probably the late 90s to around the sort of Glen Roeder era. So from sort of like Mike Walker, second time around up to Glen Roeder era. So mostly sort of knocking around sort of mid-table championship to when we got relegated, and obviously the Worthington years as well. But yeah.
how did he end up falling into that? Because if you give us just a little bit of a background of your dad, if you don't mind.
Well, he used to be a like a nightclub bouncer for years,
Wow.
years and years, and I think ended up sort of doing like event stewarding, and then sort of I'm not sure how it's run now, but I think it was sort of like contractors managed, sort of did the stewarding at Norwich, and sort of fell into that through doing events like at Silverstone and Snetterton and things like that. So yeah, just sort of fell into it. He quickly became sort of like, I think the later years he was basically head steward of the Lower Barclay, so he just sort of had the free run of the whole stand, really.
He's quite a recognisable character, though, isn't he?
Yeah. And he grew up on King Street as well, so he was always very local to the ground.
But originally from Portsmouth.
Yeah, his dad was in the RAF growing up, so he always had a soft spot for Portsmouth as well. He always used to joke that when we played them, that he'd sing Pompey songs in the Lower Barclay.
Yeah, of course he would. That about sums him up.
Yeah, wind-up merchant.
I mean, during that time, did he ever have any trouble? Or, I mean, do you remember anything that he shared with you?
Not really, to be honest. I think because he'd always done, like, been a bouncer, done nightclubs, events, it was just sort of normal work for him. He didn't really think anything of it. Just sort of got on with it, really. I think he probably always had scuffles and stuff, but just part of the job.
Yeah. It's a bit tamer now, I think.
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
Yeah, I should imagine it was quite fruity back in the day.
Yeah, I mean, I remember him telling me stories from when he used to go to away days back in like the 70s and 80s, and sort of running away, like telling me stories of running away from Wolves fans and hopping on a bus to get away from groups of them. And
yeah, Wolves have that weird rivalry with us.
Yeah.
Owing to something. It must date way back. I know recently because one of the players injured one of our players or something. I can't remember, Jez. What was that?
So I missed you there. Say that bit again.
The Wolves rivalry with where did that come from?
So I think it's well, from my point of view, it's the Craig Bellamy, Kevin Muscat incident. But I think it goes back further than that.
Yeah, must do.
I think there's been a few games down the years where there's been issues. Was it someone came on right at the start of this podcast and talked about that he went to Wolves and was walking away from the ground and they were pelting him with like coins and bottle caps and stuff like that. And he just said the experience of going to Wolverhampton Wanderers just wasn't a great experience. And it's that kind of area, isn't it? I suppose. But yeah, I think I certainly remember that kicking off when obviously Bellamy, should I say Muscat did Bellamy. That was pretty horrific, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. I think sort of moving on then, if that's okay with you, gents. Question 5 is, if you could sign any former Norwich player in their prime for the current squad, who would it be?
Well, I think although we could definitely do prime Harry Kane right now, I'd have to say Dean Ashton is my
Yeah.
pick for this one. He's with us quite a short while, wasn't he? Just a year, I think, in the end, from January to January. Obviously stuck around for half a season after we got relegated, but before he moved on to West Ham. But and then unfortunately suffered his injury, which forced him to retire early. But
That's right.
great striker in his prime. Yeah.
I think had we signed him, we always talk about Ashton. I say we as a collective Norwich community, that if we'd signed him, in the summer transfer window, or at least in August, we probably would have stayed up that season, because his impact on the team, from when he came into, to the end of that season, although he, much like the rest of his team, didn't turn up in that Fulham game, as we mentioned earlier on. His impact in the team, his goals. I remember his goal against Man United, his goal against Man City, which is one of the best goals I've ever seen at Carrow Road. I think he was just that sort of, was that outlet that we kind of missed when we sold Roberts, or at least released Roberts. And he, I'm not putting him in the same category as Roberts, because he would have gone on to be one of England's best strikers.
Yeah.
I'm not overstating that.
You said that in a podcast previously, for those listening. I mean, it was the injury at West Ham, right?
Yeah.
That curtailed his career.
No, do you know what? I think he did it on the England.
Yeah, he did it in England. Yeah, I think I'm sure I remember reading something about he tried to get compensation for that from the national side, because it was during a training session, I think.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's bizarre, isn't it, how these things play out, because at that point, he'd, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think he'd had although they didn't win the FA Cup, it was that infamous West Ham Liverpool game at Cardiff, at the Millennium Stadium, where they were 2-0 up and they lost 3-2 with Gerrard's goal right at the end. But he scored in that game. And I think he got his England, or at least one of his he never played for England, did he? I don't think, actually. Maybe got 1 or 2 caps. I might be not remembering that correctly, but his impact in that game alone, shows what he could have gone on to.
Yeah, I mean, he definitely knew where the goal was.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I think for me it's got to be either him or Huckabee. I think that, again, the player that had a magnificent impact on the team. And he'd fit in. I think he'd fit in really well to he's very similar to Sainz in the way that not his mentality, but his the way he plays football. I think it's very similar.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really have anyone. I mean, you heard me say about Jerome earlier. I think this current squad, we have Sargent, but often I feel like I'm on his back, but I'm not. No player wants to get injured, right? But Jerome was just so solid as a striker. Like, you could bank on him for a season. He's not going to fall off, get injured. So for that very reason, we're light in that area. And I appreciate what Hoff is trying to do with Snack. Is that how you pronounce his name? Shinak. But I do kind of worry sometimes. It doesn't keep me up at night, guys, but but yeah, Jerome for me.
Yeah, no, definitely. Morgan, next question.
Okay. So in sort of making light of things, what's your best or funniest memory from following Norwich?
I think definitely my funniest is probably just the being in the old Red Lion after the playoff win.
Do you explain to the listeners where the old Red Lion is?
So it's like essentially the the Norwich supporters pub in Angel in London, and I think we watched both of the semi-final games there against Ipswich.
Yeah.
And, you know, generally that whole run was just fantastic, wasn't it? Beating Ipswich in the semi-finals and then winning at Wembley and then going back to the Old Red after the game to carry on the celebrations, and the conga lines out of the one pub door round out onto the street with an inflatable canary, and back into the pub again for more
Yeah.
laps.
I'd forgotten about that. I think I mentioned it on a previous podcast, but
the first one, Morgan, it was the yeah, it was. It sounded like something to behold, really.
there is YouTube evidence of it, because I asked on the Pinken a couple of years ago if anyone was there, and someone filmed it. But yeah, we sang the song, didn't we, to the song by Foster the People, Jumped Up Kid. Is it Jumped Up Kicks or Kids or something?
Yeah.
All we've got to do is win at Wembley. We're going up to the Premier League.
Yeah, and we basically just sung that for about 4 hours. Lines.
Yeah, we had work the next day because it was a bank holiday Monday, if I recall.
Yeah, and that was my second day at Wembley in a row as well, as my partner's a Preston fan, and I went the day before for the League One playoff final. So I was feeling a bit fragile by the end of that 2 days at Wembley of celebrations.
You may as well just pack the tent and a Norwich City themed tent outside the ground.
Yeah, definitely. It sounded fantastic, but I mean, I had some great away days, and some really funny memories alongside that. I think it wasn't such a good result for us, but the guys that I used to go to watch the game with, he drank in the Cricketers' Rest on Hall Road. By the way, the pub's long gone, and it's a shame because it was such.
I remember it. It used to be a gig. Me and Glaysher used to go to punk rock gigs there.
Yeah,
in the little garage bit.
The landlords, if you remember him, I actually see him last home game. Joe Royal was the landlord, not the the guy that went on to manage Ipswich, but a different Joe Royal. I don't know if you remember him as well, but he was certainly a character. But anyway, sort of getting back to the story, we went on to the Charlton game, which was the last game of the season before we sadly got relegated to League One. But the guys organised a stretch limo from the outside the Cricketers' Rest to the Valley. It was just so fun. It was so funny. Like the whole journey was us just sitting in this stretch limo drinking beer. I think we all had to relieve ourselves on the A11 at one point. Nick Mills. So there was just this sort of stretch limo of about 12 lads just lined up, just but yeah, it was just this. Yeah, I don't know who thought of it or who thought it would be a good idea, but yeah, it was certainly it was one of those experiences that you certainly remember with fondness.
Flying the flags outside the windows.
Yeah, there was certainly a lot of that going on, and sort of that Hollywood style of people got out of the and I think it would have been a bit better if we would have got the result to stay up, but we sadly didn't, did we? But,
that makes it all the more better, all the more sadder, maybe.
True.
I'd have paid to have seen that.
It was certainly it made the day bearable. Let's put it that way. So moving on to, unless you got anything else for that one.
No.
Moving on to question 7, which is, which Norwich kit is your all-time favourite?
Oh, see, I'm a bit of a kit man. I love my classic shirts. I don't own it, but the 1981 Adidas Norwich shirt is probably my all-time favourite with the pinstripes.
Is that when Fashanu played for us?
What year was? I can't remember off the top of my head.
I'm fairly certain it is, but yeah, I know the one. It's very nice.
Yeah. And then I'm a sucker for 90s goalkeeper shirts as well. The Brian Gunn era,
Oh yeah.
all the multicolored goalie shirts. I had all of them as a kid. Um, if they still fitted me, I would still wear them for
Oh,
sure.
why not just wear them now? Just show your midriff off.
Show a bit of belly.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's what the girls do, isn't it?
but yeah, with the big padded shoulders, and
Oh yeah.
loved it. Yeah, great shirts.
No, definitely. It was. Yeah, I mean, for me, it's always I always revert back to the fluorescent yellow and green bits on the side of the navy Coleman's kit when we had the.
Oh, I remember that one. Yeah.
made by
Great shirt. Yeah, I've still got that knocking around somewhere as well. Yeah.
the aforementioned Chris Reeves been sporting the. I don't think it's the. It's the. Do you know what I'm saying? It's not the authentic one.
Yeah, it's the replica they've got at the moment. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I actually bought one on eBay a few years ago, which was apparently a match worn Adrian Coots one, which had
classic.
It's got number 13 on the back of it, and I wore it for the first time I played football for about probably 6 or 7 years. We went on a stag weekend recently, and I wore it for that. We all were wearing these sort of classic football shirts, and a few Luton fans dotted in there, a Nottingham Forest fan, and that was the one that I'd sort of decided to sort of and the fact mainly the one that still fitted me, because a lot of my shirts unfortunately don't fit me anymore. I'm going to let you read that into what you will, but I think that one, I think the one we had in that promotion season a few years ago, where they've done the redesign of the bird poo kit.
Yeah, on the shoulders.
Correct. Yeah.
Another one I loved was the tartan kit.
Oh yeah.
I remember getting that for Christmas when I was a kid, and insisting to wear it at football training in the middle of December, or the end of December, and it was absolutely freezing, and I was so miserable, but I was so determined to wear the full kit.
You still insist on wearing the full kit, don't you?
I do, yeah. You'll probably see me at a game because
waiting for the call up.
Waiting for the call up with shin pads on at the ready.
Brilliant. Morgan, I think that's time to move on to the next question, please, sir.
Okie doke. So, if you could interview any Norwich legend, past, present, who would it be, and what would you ask?
For this one, I'd pick Jeremy Goss.
Interesting.
So I'd love to just chat to him about that era really, and especially the UEFA Cup run and scoring against Bayern Munich, and just chat to him about that period of time and what the vibe was like that season, and
how they did it, because they were odds
how they did it.
Yeah. So I think the fact that they ended, we were there right until that dreadful run at the end, the inaugural Premier League. So
we're so close to winning the league. Yeah, I think, don't we have some statistic as well as being like the highest placed finishers with negative goal difference?
Yeah. That's a great pub quiz question stat as well.
Yeah,
definitely is. Jeremy Goss is a great show. And actually, do you know what, Morgan? I know we've been looking for some ex-Norwich players to come on, haven't we? And that was one of the ones I kind of glazed over, I suppose, and probably shouldn't have done. I think he'd be a great person to come on and talk about all of that sort of era, which was a really important era of Norwich City, right? And I think he'd be perfect to. So if you're listening, Jeremy,
you know where to find us. We're on the
get in touch.
Just as a point, actually, to our listeners, we actually do have a fan who was at the Munich game, upcoming on another podcast. So stay tuned and be on the lookout for that one.
I thought you were going to use that opportunity to plug our former player that is coming up in the next few weeks.
We've got it all going on, Jez.
We have. Yeah, go on then. I'll let you plug that as well.
We've got another a former Norwich player turned fear coach, international renowned fear coach, upcoming as well for those who are interested in sports psychology. It's an episode not to be missed. Do you like my tone? Was that a good tone to adopt?
Excellent. It was, yeah. It was
Okay.
absolutely phenomenal.
Still working on that promotional tone.
If that doesn't turn people on to this podcast, I don't know what will.
Picture of me in my pants.
Well, no. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I don't know how to respond to that really without being rude.
Probably don't need to.
Yeah. Okay. So I suppose if we move swiftly on then to what is the biggest high? Sorry, I'll rephrase that. What's the biggest high and lowest low you've experienced as a Norwich fan?
Biggest high I've experienced, again, bringing it up at the playoff final. Doesn't get much better than that as a football fan. And lows. I still remember that the first time we were relegated in 1995. Oddly enough, I'd have only been 9, but I still remember watching. It must have been Grandstand.
Oh yeah, Grandstand.
Final score.
There's Lynham.
Des Lynham literally being like, Norwich City have been relegated. And I was just sort of sitting there on the floor watching it, and I couldn't quite believe it because, all I'd known was us. Just 2 years earlier, we've been, at the top and in Europe, and then to sort of suddenly be dropping down to the first division. That was.
We had quite a similar upbringing, didn't we, Ben? And I think, during that time, I know your family was a lot closer to the club than say mine was. But, I remember being from Dereham and going to the Norfolk show. And I've said this to Jez before, like, they'd wheel out a B team player. They'd have to sit there and sign whatever crap they had. But like, that was a thing. You'd go to the little stall, get your goodie bag, wear your little paper hat and so on. And it was really, I think, a period of my childhood that was really happy, and it was exciting that our club in our little part of the world was doing really well. And I remember all the kids at football training having that mitre the season after the bird poo kit had the yellow shirt with Ward on the back, and then all of a sudden it's not that way anymore, and we're not good anymore. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, I used to collect the Premier League football stickers, and getting all the Norwich players, and it was a big thing to be part of the Premier League, and I think that was the year we got relegated was also the year they dropped the amount of teams in the Premier League from 22 to 20. So 4 teams got relegated that season.
Yeah.
What teams were they? Do you remember?
I've actually got it here right now. Palace, Norwich, Leicester, and Ipswich. Ipswich finished bottom with 27 points.
It might well be a case of history repeating itself.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Morgan, last question, I think, unless we've got anything else to add there.
No. So, if you had to describe Norwich City in 3 words, what would they be?
You probably know what I'm going to say here.
Along
come Norwich.
Oh, Jez doesn't like that. Jez does not like that saying, do you, Jez?
I think. Do you know why as well? I'll let you get to your point, Ben. But yeah. I do need to interject here.
So serious.
I hate it because the reason I do is because, and the work that goes on with the Along Come Norwich movement, I'm not disputing that. I think they do a lot of good for Norwich because they're behind all the flags, right? Is it them?
Yeah.
I don't dispute the work that they've done, and I think there's been another podcast movement as well that use the Along Come Norwich strap line, which I think is the same guys. But anyway, the reason I don't like it is because that expression was used to kind of label the team in a negative way back in the day. It was like, this team, they haven't won in 15 games and Along Come Norwich, and it's like,
it has stuck, hasn't it? I did find this one really difficult, and it made me laugh to think of that. But I think every club really has its along-come moments, don't they?
It does. But do you know what? I'm going to caveat that as well and say that I think the along-come Norwich negative impact has been sometimes outweighed with a positive one recently. I mean, I'm frantically trying to think of an example, but there's times where a team have been on. Can you still hear me?
Yeah, we lost you a little bit, but
sorry.
You're back.
There has been times, and I was frantically trying to think of ways and examples, but there has been times where a team has been, winning a load of games and then all of a sudden we turn up and actually beat them. Maybe the Man City game a couple of seasons ago, where they'd won the league at a canter, hadn't they? I think the previous year, and then all of a sudden they come to Carrow Road and we dismantle them. But yeah, sorry, carry on.
Oh yeah, I mean, like you said as well, there's a lot of positive to come out of along-come Norwich with the the movement and everything they do for the fans, and I think to Norwich fans, I think it has multiple meanings now rather than what we're perceived by from opposition fans.
No, absolutely.
What would yours be, Jez?
Do you know what? Do you remember, and I don't know if they still use it, but a lot of companies do this, don't they? Certainly the company that I used to work for did this, where they go for a bit of a rebrand and a bit of a new way of thinking behind the scenes to kind of motivate the staff. And they come up with these sort of words, don't they? Like resilience and,
we know all too well.
Motivational and all of this. But for me, I think, community would be one word.
Yeah.
I think the team, the club, and the team as well, because we saw that at Christmas, didn't we? Where we had some players going into local hospitals and seeing children and stuff that were within the hospital getting themselves better, and I think that there's that massive community aspect there. And there's probably one for another podcast, but we could talk about that for hours about what
sure.
the community. I think local. I think that's, it's kind of the same as community, isn't it? But I think we're the only professional football team outfit within the county.
Yeah.
I don't think we've got another sort of, we're not like a London team that's got another 8 or 9 teams around them. We're very much focused on the local, local, not community, local, help me out there, the area, but also more economy was the word I was looking for. So all of the pubs and the restaurants and the clubs that the things that the club use get a kickback off that. And I think finally, third word would be love. I think we're very much a fan base that love can be used in 2 or 3 different ways, can it? We love to support Norwich, but sometimes we hate that we love it.
Yeah, I agree.
Because of how they, sometimes how we've been treated as fans, not necessarily all the time, but certainly in spells, and more recently as well. But there's also that love that we'll always go back to them. We'll, regardless of how well we get treated, we always, it doesn't matter. We love supporting Norwich and those would be the 3 words that I would use. How was that for off the cuff? Because I hadn't prepared for that.
Yeah, it was good. It was good, Jez. Quite heavy at the end, but very, 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 very apt. I'd say Cook past Babtridge. And for those who know what that comes from, I salute you. Right, it's come to that time, Jez. Have you got the theme tune ready?
I have, yeah. Let me just.
Amazing.
I've got the theme tune, and here we go.
Wow. Ben, how does it feel to be exposed to that new interlude? Yeah, silence is golden.
Silence, yeah.
Did you hear the lyrics?
Yeah. Kinda.
Good.
So, without further ado, So me and Ben, me and Glaysher we've got quite a few tattoos. We were into like punk when we were younger, and I'm going to plug my brother's tattoo studio in Norwich and in Durham. If any listeners are thinking about getting a tattoo, please do check out HD13 Designs by my brother, Huey. He'll be more than happy to, hook you up.
Whoa. Have we just got paid for that or not?
Paid for in love. Brotherly love. So, Jez, it's a community thing, remember? Love and all that.
Yeah, local and community, yeah.
So my random question of the week, Ben, if you could get a photographic still of a classic Norwich City moment tattooed, what would it be and why?
And where on your body?
And where on your body? Remember, this is a family show, I hasten to add.
Oh, that's a tough one. So many possible. Photographic memory.
I mean, if it helps, I would get Ricky Van Wolfswinkel and Chris Hughton's faces when they first signed him tattooed on either one of my kneecaps.
Yes. I would probably. Oh, that's a tough one. There's that moment when Pookie scored against QPR with his
Chest,
and there was an odd photo, an odd still of him, a face he pulled. Did the rounds in our local WhatsApp groups for a bit. Obviously, it would have to be across the whole back.
Oh, a back piece.
A back piece.
Would you get Timu's signature with it as well?
Of course, yeah.
Okay. Black and white.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And,
what about you, Jez?
You're
you're furiously thinking over there.
I preempted because I hadn't for the first few of these random questions, but I preempted you were going to chuck it across to me, so I've got one.
Oh.
I'd have the Jeremy Goss goal against Bayern Munich.
Yeah.
We all know the pose.
Has to be.
But what I would do is I'd utilise one of my nipples as the football, and I'd have Jeremy Goss just above it, volleying my nipple into the goal, and perhaps Lothar Matthäus on my back, like looking on. It was Lothar Matthäus, wasn't it? Whoever the defender was, maybe it wasn't Lothar Matthäus, but whoever the defender was that was standing behind him, looking like, well, what's just happened? I'd have that sort of random German footballer on my back.
Why not?
Yeah.
We are football fans after all.
Indeed. I think on that revelation, it's probably a good time to do the sign off.
Yes. So, as ever, I've been Morgan Hewitt.
I've been Jez Davies.
We've been Beyond the Barclay. And Ben, do you want to shout out to anyone?
I'll give a shout out to Woody.
Oh, yeah. So can we end on this note? So Woody is a good friend of mine in Glaysher's, Jez.
Yeah.
He came up with this absolutely profound quote the other day.
Yeah.
So football is a sphere and life is a sphere, just like football.
Yeah. That's amazing. That's provoking, that, isn't it?
It really is.
Also, have you ever decided to write on the bottom of his shoe Andy before? Just for
I think we should probably end the show.
Did you get the reference? Nah. The tumbleweed's sort of moving across, isn't it? When is Toy Story 27 out?
Oh, that was poor.
You got it now, haven't you?
Yeah.
It's the humour that keeps this going, doesn't it?
I think so. It's something. It's a good job this isn't live.
It's going in.
Oh.
Gents, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure getting to know a little bit more about you, Ben. And can we have a score prediction, please, for Derby at the weekend?
Yeah, I'm just going to go for a nice, easy 2-0 win.
Excellent. And its scorers?
Sargent and Cernak, I think.
Yeah, that's a good shout. Morgan?
10-0.
Well, I actually think we're going to win 5-1 again.
You can't say you're just ripping me off now, aren't you?
Yeah, well, I mean, I just think there's going to be a lot of confidence around the team after the Watford win and the subsequent Swansea game previously. They're on a bit of a run at the moment. I'll be very surprised if there's not goals. And when I say goals, I mean goals. Jurasak's going to be, or Jurassic, or whatever, however pronouncing his surname. I think it's Jurasek. He's going to be in, but probably not from the start. I think he'll be off the bench.
Yeah, got a pretty hefty old squad now.
Well, I mean, that's the other thing. Like, sorry, we've kind of done the sign off, and I want to say something else. Mahovo, I think he might have to drop out, because if we're going to start McConneville, then Doyle goes to left back, doesn't he?
Yeah.
And I just think that's harsh on Mahovo, because he's been exceptional the 2 games he's played, but I don't know. That's obviously a conundrum for, and it's a nice conundrum, isn't it? But maybe McConneville will start on the bench. We'll see. But I think both of those two solid signings. So, yeah, right. Once again, everyone, thanks for.
That's it for this episode of Beyond the Barclay. Thanks so much for listening. Your support means the world to us. Don't forget to follow or subscribe on your favorite podcast platform and leave a review if you enjoy the show. You can also catch all our episodes on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. And if you've got any questions, stories, or topics you'd like me to cover, get in touch. I'd love to hear from you. Until next time, on the Ball City.